So hello and welcome to the March 2019 edition of the Amsterdam Film Show. My name's Kathy Leung and here's David Swatling.
Nice to be back, Kathy.
Yeah. And so as usual, you've seen a film to review.
I have High Life.
Brilliant. And also we've got a film event to pick out. There's always so many film events and special screenings going on in Amsterdam. We just picked out one film festival for you that David's researched.
One of my favorites.
And then just a few highlights of the rest of the new releases in the Dutch cinemas in March 2019. So in March 2019, what special film event have we picked out for you?
Well, it's one of my favorites, Kathy, of all the Amsterdam film festivals all year round. I've been going for, I think, almost 30 years, before it was even called the Rosa Filmdag, which it's been called for 22 years now. So that's how long I've been a fan of this festival. So the penguins are back, but orange is the new pink, because Rosa Filmdag does translate into Pink Film Days for those of us who are a little more English-minded. And yeah, it's an incredible selection. It's grown and grown over the years. And this year, 140-some films in 10 days, all at the Kettle House or the in the Westergasfabriek. And what I've always loved about this festival, Kathy, is that the incredible diversity. I mean, it really does include every letter in the LGBTQIA range.
Wow, brilliant.
And it's, I mean, this year they're opening with a film called Carmen and Lola from Spain, which is about a lesbian relationship in the Roma community outside Madrid. Very interesting.
Yeah, very niche.
Yeah, very, very. Well, you would say that, but I mean, that's the thing about gay and lesbian subjects. They are everywhere and in every community. And what the Rosa Filmdag does seem to try to do, and it succeeds in, is finding those films from all kinds of places where you don't quite think about. I mean, it's not just the American and the Brits who are, or Paris or the big capitals. There are stories everywhere, and those stories are represented all over the place in the Rosa Filmdag. They always have special sections.
Okay.
Like, for instance, this year, 50 Shades of Activism. That's because it's the 50th anniversary this year of the Stonewall riots in New York City. And so it's sort of a broad look at activism in different parts of the world in different ways. For instance, there's a film called Riot about the 1978 riots in Sydney, Australia.
Okay.
There's I Will Speak about AIDS, people living with HIV and AIDS around the world today. There's also one of the featured films this year, or one of the more name films, is Mapplethorpe, which is a biopic about the photographer Robert Mapplethorpe, who in New York City in the, it was just late 70s, early 80s, became really his photography was really strong, but there were court cases against his work by the U.S. government, and then he contracted HIV/AIDS and later died of the disease. And Mapplethorpe is played by the young actor who we know here from Doctor Who, Matt Smith, and it looks terrific. I mean, it's definitely one of the ones I'm going to see. I can't see everything. I mean, I try to sort of zero in on unique experiences that may or may not get to the cinemas. One of those. Every once in a while, they show a classic. And in this case, the classic is a 1985 film called Buddies from America. It was one of the first films dealing with HIV/AIDS by director Arthur Bresson. And he was kind of trying to show up the hypocrisy of Hollywood, who were not covering the subject at all in their filmmaking back in 1985. And, it's a simple story about an AIDS patient and a volunteer, back then called the Buddies Project. But they've digitally enhanced the film to bring it up to date. And, it's a really rare opportunity to see something like that on the big screen.
Good.
There are films from Latin America. I mean, Latin America is really well represented. Asia, Africa. There's films about sports and religion. There's films about music and art. A couple of interesting music ones. One from South Africa about a military choir, men's choir during apartheid. And one from Vietnam about classical opera. So there's the whole range, and that's why I love this festival. I highly recommend you order tickets soon, because as of our filming, there are already screenings sold out. So hurry up. It runs from the 14th to the 24th of March, 10 days of just gay film heaven.
The film High Life is out in Dutch cinemas from the 14th of March. Here's our review from David Swatling.
I'm always looking for something interesting to review for you guys. And this month, I saw a film, a sci-fi film, directed by a woman. Now, maybe because, when I was looking at the list, the Oscar buzz was going around about how there were no women directors nominated for an Oscar this year. But I thought, oh, this sounds interesting, sci-fi directed by a woman. I'm going to go see that. Now, I'm going to admit to my ignorance here. I did not realize that the woman director from France was Claire Denis, a rather well-known darling of the festival circuit. She's been making films since 1988. Her first film, Chocolat, was a big hit. She had studied with Wim Wenders and Jim Jarmusch, and she's 72 years old. So the fact that I thought I was seeing a film by some young new director, no, not the case at all. Which is maybe why High Life is a really interesting film. Sci-fi is what it said in the listing, but this is a really unusual sci-fi film. And it's her first film in English. Now, that's important because I love what she said, that she wanted to film it in English because she didn't think anyone spoke French in outer space. Which is, when it comes to the space programs these days and space films, yeah, it's always in English and, okay, maybe Russian. But so anyway, that's why it's her first film in English. And I like that attitude. Now, let me start by saying this is not necessarily a sci-fi film for sci-fi fans. You're not going to get any big, gigantic special effects and sweeping music and a hero who battles against adversity and comes through it in the end. No, this is a very different kind of film. In fact, I'd even go so far as to say this is a sci-fi film for people who don't necessarily like sci-fi films. Because what Claire Denis has done is she's taken a very interesting situation and explores within it really the condition in which humanity, she thinks, might be heading. And it's not necessarily a happy ending. Let's start with the beginning of the film. An astronaut outside the spaceship fixing something, but he's having communication with the only other person on the spaceship, a 14-month-old baby, his daughter Willow. And as Monty and Willow talk over the baby-com, space-age baby-com, we begin to see that the ship is kind of worn down, and it's done in these long, beautiful shots and lots of interaction with the baby. And this sequence lasts for a half an hour. Now, it's like, what's going on? I have no idea what's going on, except it's sort of like a lullaby, because then what happens is we start to find out why this man and this baby are alone on this spacecraft. They were part of a project that started many years before, where death row inmates were offered the opportunity to leave death row and go on a space mission to a black hole outside the solar system to find a new energy source. Okay, but these are criminals, alone on a spaceship for years. What could go wrong? Well, what starts going wrong almost immediately is that there's a scientist doing experiments on the people on the spacecraft. And that scientist is Dr. Dibbs, played by Juliette Binoche, who any other person would probably make this role into kind of a two-dimensional bad scientist, mean, character. But she is so wonderful. She brings a kind of a depth and a complexity to the character. And that, I think, is because Claire Denis is really looking at the interactions between human beings and how they work. The things, like I said, don't go well. I mean, these are criminals after all. And tender, loving scenes are contrasted with absolute scenes of horrible violence. Plus, the scientific experimentation that Dr. Dibbs is doing on the criminals has to do with artificial insemination, trying to have a baby in space, but without letting them have sex, except on their own in a strange contraption called the box. Yeah, it's a little kinky. So it's a very interesting view of the future and space travel and what happens, and the whole thing is held together because it's not exactly linear as a film, but it all held together by the performance of Robert Pattinson, who I saw last year in a little film called Good Time, and I thought he was good, but maybe trying a little too hard. But in this film, he's fantastic. I mean, there's something, I mean, the whole half-hour sequence with him and the baby at the beginning is so full of contradictions and secrets, and you wonder where is it going? How do we know this happened? And then later, when we start finding things out, there are reversals, and I don't know. He's great, and Juliette Binoche is great as the doctor, and the whole cast is really terrific. It's filmed not on the usual bells and whistles, outrageous special effects spacecrafts that we see in other big movies. No, it's a much simpler design, more artistic actually, because she used a Danish-Icelandic artist named Olafur Eliasson for the design of the film. And it really gives this is definitely auteur cinema. And, it may be kinky, but it's intelligent. It may be brutally violent, but it's really thought-provoking. And I don't know, if science fiction is not your thing, this might be a science fiction film you could sink your teeth into. There's an interesting metaphor in the film, which is the illusion that space, when you're traveling through it, it seems like you're going backwards when you're actually going forwards. And I think that's kind of the major metaphor for this piece. It's a bleak look at the condition of humans based on where we are now, and I'm talking about the not so good where we are now. What might that be like in the future? And as bleak as it might seem, it's a really interesting view. So I highly recommend it.
So, what other new films are out in March 2019? Here's a few. From the 6th of March, Captain Marvel, a superhero action fantasy. Starring Brie Larson and Ben Mendelsohn. Carol Danvers becomes the hero the universe needs as Earth becomes the battleground between two warring alien races. The horror film Us is out from the 21st of March. So this is the latest from Jordan Peele, who also directed Get Out. It's starring Lupita Nyong'o and Elizabeth Moss. A family's trip to their beach house turns to chaos when a group of doppelgangers begin to terrorise them. Too scary for me, but I'm pretty sure David is well up for this one. He's a horror buff. At the end of the month, we've got Dumbo, the live-action remake. A young circus elephant is mocked for his big ears until people find out they enable him to fly. His talent leads Dumbo and the family who care for him away from the struggling circus to the sparkling dreamland, where all is not what it seems. With music by Arcade Fire. So this one's directed by Tim Burton, and it's also got other big names: Danny DeVito, Michael Keaton, Colin Farrell and Eva Green. From the 28th of March, Thunder Road. So this is a drama comedy from director-screenwriter Jim Cummings, who also stars in the film. A divorced police officer who loses his mother has a personal crisis, but finds new meaning in raising his daughter. Now, if you can't make it to the cinema for this one, just watch the 2-minute trailer because it's already powerful enough. So that's it for the Amsterdam Film Show for March 2019. Thanks to David, our critic, and see you next month.